Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Esquire Coaching Radio, where we help attorneys achieve unparalleled personal and professional success. And now here's your host, Ann Jenrette Thomas.
Welcome everyone to the Esquire Coaching Radio Show. It's so exciting to be back with all of you this week and back in the East Coast. As you all know, last week I was broadcasting live from Seattle from the NALP conference, so that was exciting. So as you know, Esquire Coaching is a national coaching and consulting firm that is dedicated to helping attorneys achieve extraordinary whole life success. And to that end, we discuss the full range of topics from building business to getting a job to work-life balance and everything in between. Today we have a very special guest who's going to talk to us about the softer side of selling. Say what you need to say to grow your client base without sacrificing your soul. Now, we all know that no one likes a hard sell, especially those of us who are in the service industry in service to others, like lawyers. The softer side of selling introduces methods of drawing clients to you through the use of compelling conversation. And our special guest is Christine Clifton, who's going to educate us about this process. Christine is the founder of Client Centric Growth and the creator of programs like Wealth Harvest. The fortune is in the follow-up, and you don't have to shout to stand out. She's combined the best of her corporate sales coach experience with the reality of service business entrepreneurship to create the softer side of selling. She helps mindful service business owners and independent professionals feel confident and comfortable promoting their business. She draws forth their natural strengths so they speak from a place of conviction and connect with the people they really want to help. In the process, they grow their client base, earn what they're worth, and make a bigger difference in our community. Christine, welcome.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here with you.
I'm so glad you're here. And this is a topic that everybody shies away from, but I feel like it is crucial, especially for lawyers, to hear this message. I think when we think about sales, we often think about a sleazy, slimy person that's like pushing something onto you that you don't really need, but you're not talking about that at all.
Oh, not at all. And it's another way to do it. It's another way to sell, and it appeals to certain people. You know, so that some of your listeners might like some different methods. You know, there's a method I'll be talking about here. No matter what you get out of today, it's important to pick the pieces that fit you and who you are, because those are the things that are going to come across most authentically for you. So I can't wait to talk more about it.
I love it. Okay, so let's dive right in. How did you come to design this softer way of selling?
Well, you know, like a lot of people in the coaching consulting kind of industry, I took some classes on selling, selling ourselves. And I tried a lot of them. And none of them were working so well for me. I would have a couple of successes, but I just found my way kind of stumbling through the processes. Now, you mentioned earlier that I was a sales coach in corporate, and I oversaw about 100 plus people in a commercial industrial sales kind of environment. It was plastic, not real sexy. And the sales there were a little bit different, quite honestly, when you're selling yourself versus when you're selling a product. And so what I ended up doing was just organically over time changing my approach. And when I would see something that worked really well, I would just go back and look at it a little closer, like what were the success factors of that particular new client. And so I started putting it together in a process, and that's how I came up with a softer way of selling, is that I also have this gift of seeing themes and patterns in my clients so I can leverage their strengths. And so I was able to do that with myself as well. And so I put this process together in a way that will feel comfortable for most service business owners.
I love it. And I think it was so good to hear that you took the time to really be able to tweak it and make it your own.
Yes, that is one of the things I think some people overlook is, we think the gurus or the people who are making multiple seven figures, that they teach us the system and we have to do the system exactly like they're teaching us. And that was my mistake. And actually, I don't believe in mistakes. It was one of my learning points. And what I could have done was instead take the points that really fit me and put those to work for me. And so, yeah, I was able to look back at myself and what I was doing and tweak it so that it fits me. And that's what I help my clients with too. Every part of my process doesn't fully fit them, so we'll tweak it so that it does. And then they find themselves just growing in confidence over time, and we can layer some new things back in once they get really comfortable with what they're doing.
Okay, great. So would you, just to give our audience a little bit of context, will you walk us through what this system is, the softer side of selling?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's really four major components to the process, and the first two are not actions outside of yourself at all. They're actually internal process and exploration that you take for yourself. The first one is to really understand the why behind why you're in business. Why are you in business, or why are you in the role if you're in a law firm? Why are you doing this particular role? I find that many people skip this. They either jump into a job at a firm or company, or if they're a service business owner, they immediately hang their shingle out as the thing that they do. And they don't take the time to look back and say, well, why in the world am I doing this anyway? And so why is this important? It's because there's actually brain science behind a compelling message or compelling story when you tell people why you do what you do. It evokes emotion, and people make decisions based on emotion. So the first component is looking at your why, and it's also bringing forth some unique position statements that you might have about your work. Because, again, when people hear that, they can say, that sounds like me, or that may not sound like me, and they might go on to the next person, which is actually perfect. And then the second step is bringing that forth into what I call messaging, and I use a concept called micro-messaging, and your listeners could probably Google micro-marketing and get an idea about what this is, but I say service business owners, but I can really go into a micro message and say, well, I help attorneys in law firms, or I could say I help solo practicing attorneys. And that's micro messaging, is really coming down to saying who do you help and how they benefit, not the what that you do. And that's one of the things that people talk a lot about is what, because quite honestly, that's what they're good at. But when people are making a decision, they don't really care about that part. They really only care about what you can do for them. And if you're not saying that in your messaging, you're not going to have a quick opt-in to want to know more. So those are the first two kind of internal processes that are part of this system. And then we talk about the external process. So the external process is all about how you're setting yourself up to be in a position to receive. One of my coaches says that marketing is putting yourself in a position to receive, and I love that definition because it kind of takes the burden off of marketing. And when you're clear about seeking your purpose or your why or your position statements, and you're clear on your messaging, then you want to set yourself up in a place to receive. So you have to get out and about, right? So we do networking or one-on-ones or speaking, that type of thing. I know a lot of associates in law firms today are charged with client growth and client acquisition. And so they're out and about networking on behalf of the firm. So you have to place yourself in those pockets of the who, as I mentioned earlier, who you really want to serve. So it would be better off for me, for example, to go network with a bunch of attorneys than to go to a general chamber event, as an example, because those are more of the micro groups that I want to be serving, and I'm going to have a greater level of success there than I would in a general chamber when there's, 50 different business types there. So the placement, that third step is where you're placing yourself in those pools of your P's. I know there's a lot of P's there, but, but you really want to be specific about how you use your time and place yourself in that position to receive. The last step is what some, or I might say the sleazy or maybe the harder sell process might call the ask, A-S-K. I instead call it the invitation. Doesn't it sound like a better word than ask?
It really does. It actually sounds inviting.
Yes. And so what's so beautiful about that step is that it's so in alignment with service business owners because they want to be in service. You know, they want to serve other people, and they don't want to push themselves or their business or their services on others. So the invitation is a little bit of a mindset shift, but it's also about how you go about bringing the people into your business. And so that last part of the process is an invitation because you've done the prior 3 steps of the process, which is you've got compelling things to say, you have a message that's really specific and you know exactly who you want to help, and you are placing yourself in those places that are very focused to those groups so that you have a better chance of connecting with the folks that you really want to help in your practice.
I love that. Now, if you could just help our audience understand this a little bit better, because you talked about helping them convey their message in a way that reflects how it benefits the people that they are trying to serve. Can you give us an example of what's the difference between like a benefit versus, you know, a feature?
Yeah, features and benefits. There's lots of fun arguing sometimes that goes on around that. But when I talk about benefit, what helps people envision it is what are the specific outcomes that your clients see when working with you? So if you're an employment law attorney and you're starting companies, you can say that the benefit to those companies is that they save money, okay, perhaps because they're going to avoid a legal dispute. That might be one of the outcomes. I help companies save money, might be one of your messages, micro messages, or your benefits. Or you might say that if you're a intellectual property attorney, you might say that you help businesses protect their assets. And so those words are so much more specific than just saying grow your business or provide legal services to companies, employment law, because the absence of the benefit, people go, okay, I think I get what employment law folks do, but I don't, it's not really crystal clear in a picture form. So getting to the benefit will help paint that picture in a way that's much more clear. And we're talking conversation here, so think about the time when you were meeting someone in networking or one-on-one. You are just dealing with language and conversation to get your point across. So our words need to paint that picture for them because we aren't in front of a PowerPoint slide or a flip chart or something to help them see it a little more clearly. So it's the outcome or the actual results that your clients get when working with you is what the benefit would be.
I love it. That is so clear and so much. It's such a helpful tool to realize that you're really painting a picture for your prospective client about how you can very clearly serve them. And, lawyers are known for this. We tend to talk in jargon, thinking that everybody's going to understand this. But, even something as simple as saying, oh, yeah, I will provide legal representation. Well, a lot of people don't really know what that means, especially in the context when there's no adversarial relationship. So that was such a great example. Now, how do you know that this system that you're talking about works?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Of course, I put it into play in my business. I have a saying that, sometimes we're mildly successful in our businesses, but when we can harness our strengths and really do that consciously, you can become wildly successful. And so I was having a lot of hop-along, mild success, but when I really was able to look back and see exactly what I was doing, I was then able to leverage those actions consciously, of course, in my own business. Now, I like to give client results as well because those are really more powerful. And, I could say I'm successful for the spouse at home, but so I've had clients, one client tripled her revenue in about a 6-month period of time in working with me. And
wow.
What I'll say to that, I know, she had a part-time job, and she was thinking she was going to have to get a full-time job because her business wasn't taking off. And within that period of time, we were able to refine the work that she was doing, really get her target group very specific, and she started landing clients so much more quickly. She was able to quit that part-time job and, work her business full-time. And so what I'd like to say about that topic we just left about speaking the benefits, the funny side effect of that, Anne, is that when business owners, my clients, go through that process of actually listing the benefits, how they benefit their clients, they actually gain greater confidence about not only their value, but what they're charging. And so they can also up their rates, without necessarily doing more work per se. So coming back to client successes, that's part of the success is that they're able to get their rates up over time because they're starting to see and recognize and realize what the actual outcomes are of their clients. I had another client who, you might also be able to attest to this. I know I can in my business where I've served somebody for some period of time and as a client, and then I've kind of lost touch, and then I feel a little icky, about reaching back out to them a year later or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I helped the client put together what I call a client refresh campaign, and he reached back out to a very small group, about a dozen former clients, and in that refresh campaign, he actually got 2 bids on work. He was a graphic designer, and he won both bids. And that was a 264% return on investment with my services to help him develop that campaign. And it's all based in this system, this process that we're talking about today.
I love it. I think that's really helpful. And, so talk to us a little bit about the process itself. I think you've described the different components of it, but walk us through what this process is like.
Okay, I'll do that. And I'm going to give you a little verbal picture analogy then. So think about a sponge. I actually use a sponge to wash my dishes at home. And so think of all those little divots on top of the sponge. The sponge is your business as a whole. It's your whole business. The divots in the sponge are the different types of work that you perform for your clients. So an employment law attorney, they might do sexual harassment investigations, for their clients. That might be one of the things that they do. So that's a divot in the sponge. Another thing they might do is give lunch and learns to companies. Okay, that's another divot in the sponge. And so I have my clients break down their what they do into all these little divots because those are the entry points for prospective clients into your business or practice. The whole sponge, however, is your whole business. But people are going to opt into your business when they self-identify with the services that you provide. And so it's our opportunity to break down those services into the divots or to the micro components so that we can draw them into our practice, and then we can say, and oh, by the way, if they come in for a sexual harassment investigation, then we can say, I can do training and development on your whole company on this topic, right? That's a separate divot, though. One of the biggest mistakes I see business owners making is they try to message the business as a whole, and it gets diluted in the delivery when you try to message your whole business. But when you break it down into specific little steps, then people can say, oh, I want that. And then you get them into their business, and then you can show them everything else that you do or that you can do for them. And so that is part of that process. It's really understanding your business and how to message those smaller components of what you offer so that people see themselves in it, and then they opt in to working with you because they can see themselves and say, oh, I want that.
Oh, my goodness. That just makes so much sense. You know, how many times have I heard at a networking event an attorney just introduce themselves as, oh, yeah, you know, I'm an attorney at such and such firm, or they'll say, yeah, I'm an employment lawyer. But it's going back to the analogy that you just used, it is the entire sponge then, as opposed to one of the divots that would then be relatable to the prospect. So I think that makes so much sense.
Yeah, great. I'm glad you got that. It's really a compelling thing. And I'll tell you, now you probably have clients of your own, or you know people who are like this. Like, when we get micro-message, and then they're afraid that if they say yes to just that one small component, that they're going to say no to anyone else who can potentially be a client. And that's actually not the case. When you micro-message and people like you and they like your message and like what you're saying and your unique points of view, they're going to come up to you if they like you. And if you weren't in that micro-message that they that you said, they'll come up and say, you know, I want to work with you, but you said you worked with XYZ and I'm ABC. And then you say, oh, I'll work with you as well. You know, you have that opt-in point, but your compelling messaging is what people emotionally respond to and self-identify with. And so if they don't fall into the category that you're saying that you help, believe me, I haven't had this happen. They come up to you and say, but I want to work with you because they don't want to be left out. They work with service business owners, but I've worked with a couple of product businesses because of that. They've come up to me and said, well, you say you work with service businesses, but in one case I had a client who sold new skin products. She goes, but I sell products, and I'm like, I'll help you as well. And then I had another person who made or preservative-free biscotti. Doesn't that sound delicious? And she wanted help with her business. So what I would call from the listeners is like, oh, but this feels really confined. If I say something this specific, that means that I'm going to limit my opportunities to grow my business. And it's actually the other way around, because your message is so clear that people hear it and they either say, is that me? Or they'll say, I know someone like that. And if it's not either of those, your message is so clear and distinct that they're going to remember you at a time when they need you or they need somebody who matches that criteria.
That is it's so clear, you know. Before we continue, I just want to let the listeners know that if you want to ask Christine a question directly, now is the time to call in. Call in 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the queue. Call 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the queue. Okay, before I check to see if we have any of our callers, I wanted to ask you about what do you see as something that most business owners, and if you have examples of lawyers as well, that trips them up when they're selling?
Yeah, you know, selling is such a, you know, for certain people, a word that just makes our muscles kind of constrict. So that's the first thing that trips us up, and even lawyers. And if you're in a firm, you may not think of it as selling, but you know, client acquisition is certainly is certainly selling. And so it becomes that perspective change to the invitation that I mentioned earlier. So if they can set those systems up, what I find is that when the process is in place, it makes it so much easier to invite because you have spaces for them to come into your business. And so tripping up comes from a stigma around the word sell. So see if you can't do a reframe to the invitation, because when you're not specific about your messaging, people get to decide for themselves whether they want to hire you or not. When you're very clear and very specific. And so it kind of takes that burden off. You invite them in and then let them decide. And then the second thing is what I mentioned earlier, really. It's about what you said as well about the networking event. It's saying that really broad message about your whole business or your whole firm. Really look at the people you really want to serve and the particular component of work that you really enjoy doing, and craft a message around that, and then see how much more people respond to it. You wouldn't believe how much people react to a message that's so not, I'm this position for this company, because it is so different, and you're going to stand out, and people are going to approach you because it's such an interesting thing that you said. So those are the two areas that lawyers get tripped up. And the other thing I'll say, too, is I was working with a law firm, a boutique law firm here in New Jersey, and they were talking about these prospective client meetings that they go on to kind of pitch their firm to the client. And they had this templated PowerPoint presentation, and so I coached them on how to change that around to making the meeting be a data collection meeting instead of a capabilities presentation, because when you go in cold, you don't know what their needs are yet. And so if you can make your presentation more interactive and gather their needs along the way, then you can identify which service is going to meet that need instead of doing a capabilities presentation about your whole firm. And that makes it so much more specific. Yeah.
And it's responsive. So right then and there, you're demonstrating to the prospective client that we listen, we care, and we are listening so attentively that we can find the right solution based on your specific problem. And I think that is such great advice. So, we are almost out of time, and you've given such great content, which, by the way, listeners, I know we're not used to thinking of ourselves as sellers, but the reality is if you want to survive in this market especially, no matter what position you're in, whether you are a partner, an associate, whether you're in-house, it doesn't matter, you have to master at a minimum this softer side of selling. So, Christine, can you tell our listeners how they can reach you directly and get a hold of you?
Yes. LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile is Christine Clifton, and visit me there. There's a more comprehensive overview of what I do. You can visit my website. You'll find it's a very simple one-page website. You can email me straight from there, and that's that's Client Centric Growth.com. And you can get my e-workbook there, which is 7 Super Simple Business Secrets to earn more, do less, and make a bigger difference. And you can also book time to chat with me. So I welcome your listeners to book a time to chat. If any of this resonates and you want to talk to more about how it might apply to your practice, I'm always open to the conversation. And you can do all of that, all in that one place. And I would like to offer a little bonus if I have an extra second.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do something with my clients called a psychographic questionnaire, which really helps them flesh out the characteristics of the people that they really want to work with. And so as a bonus, I would love to share that with your listeners. And just email me about the questionnaire, requesting the questionnaire, and I will email you that questionnaire that you can complete and get a much better picture of who those people are that you really love to serve, so that you can start putting yourself more in their presence and have a greater opportunity to convert them into your client base.
Oh, so generous of you. And, I highly recommend that you take advantage of Christine's generous offer. So important. Christine, this was amazing. Thank you for all of your wisdom and really teaching our listeners how to authentically and almost effortlessly just start to sell and enroll people.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been our pleasure. So, audience, I want you to get involved. Tell us what you've learned from today's discussion. Join us on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. You can find all of our sites on our website, www.esquirecoaching.com. And next week, tune in so you can hear from Robin Lavitch talk about Mind Matters, the art and science of compelling communication with any personality. Until then, be well.